Wonderful. Good afternoon, I would say. I'm Ines Kaps from Women Love Consulting, and I'm super excited to have a conversation with Barbara Wilson. We will have a wonderful talk on playing to your strengths. And yes, initially it was supposed to be a LinkedIn Live. Life happens and we had some technical topics, but now we are here in a wonderful conversation. Barbara, I'm super happy and excited that you take the time for this conversation, and you have a very fascinating and I also think a very important topic you would like to talk about, and you would also like to share a story and how you play to your strengths, or what happens if you don't play to your strengths. So what is fascinating, or what is so passionate about this topic for you?
Thank you, Ines. I'm super happy to be here. I think sharing these kind of life lessons with everyone is helpful. Hopefully it can help others, because I definitely had to go through some learnings as well with regards to strengths and weaknesses. You ask what makes me so passionate. I think I did have an experience fairly early on in my career that really brought this concept of strengths and very much to the foreground. It was a painful experience, and one that I think in hindsight, you can kind of like say I grew through that. At the time, it was fairly painful and disappointing. So what happened was that I was in Procter & Gamble. We do internal assignment rotation, and it was said that I should be going into data analytics because that is an important field, and obviously important to understand strategy setting and data, the importance of data for making good decisions. And so I'm like, yes, absolutely, all for this. What then happened though is that in hindsight, I can say that fairly straightforward, is that the level of attention to detail and this savviness about data is something that you need to have to be a good data analyst. And I, didn't have that. And so I have never worked as many hours as I've worked then, and not since either. And that went on for like 9 months, where you're just like long nights every day. And you're providing output, but then when it came to the performance review, I really came in almost bottom last. And that was a huge wake-up call for me, because you recognize in hindsight that it doesn't matter how many hours you put in. You really, it's about the output ultimately, right? And if you are in a place where you are not, playing to your strength, you put in so many more hours and the outcome will still not be there, right? And so that was it took obviously a while to realize this, because the first time then I heard that, I was having a poor performance grade for that year, I first got obviously very angry and hugely disappointed, because you would assume that amount of effort put in is getting rewarded to a good degree, but that is actually not how business works that way. And luckily I had a manager that was, see my other potential, and was kind of like very clearly said then to me, for me, this is clear, you are in the wrong role. You need to have a different role. And so we need to steer you back to an area where your passion is, and where your passion matches your skills or your strengths. And so then that's what we did. We worked for the next 4 months on a equity improvement program almost, where it's really around demonstrating that one experience does not define who I am, and move on into finding another assignment where I then could play better to my strengths, right? And so I think that is how I then got out of it. It took the willingness of a manager to believe in me and to see that that 1 year performance was like a blip in the general trajectory that I was thinking for my career. And we went on to find another role that was playing more to my strength.
I think you're raising here two very important topics, where you said you were working long hours, so there was a lot of effort you put into this topic, but the outcome was not rewarded. So and I think a lot of, in particular, junior people starting off their career also, are working long hours, and I think you really need to balance and see that effort you put in does not equal reward, because the output is outcome and the output is not on that level that it is expected. And I think also the second point is that you had a manager who saw that this was neither your strength nor your passion. And I think these two elements are absolutely crucial. And just one more sentence, you also said this 1 year did not determine who you were. I think that is also what, I mean, we all can have years where we are the superstars and we're average or below average. That can also happen, and it doesn't determine who you are.
Indeed. And I think, luckily, I think at that time I was in Procter & Gamble, where they do take a longer term view on employees, right? If you are in a company that really measures year on year, then what's very important, right? And this is then also something in terms of practical advice for everyone, is to do these self-assessments, right? Many companies now have these employee goals and these check-ins and stuff. And I think that is an exercise that you as an employee, right, need to actually take serious, because it is either an opportunity to demonstrate the awesome stuff that you do, right? Or if it's actually not going really well, to really question, is this because it's fundamentally something where I'm not playing to my strength? In this case, then it's a conversation to really, how can you shift towards area that is your strength? Or, then a conversation of, we need to readjust this, because otherwise the consequences 6 months later, 9 months later will be that people are like, not good enough. Yeah. And so indeed, it is not a sad truth, but it is something that when you come into the workforce, and maybe women are more naive about this, that they think, long hours means rewards, right? And that, sometimes if you play to your strength, long hours really amplify the output that you provide. But if you don't play to your strength, you just spend a lot of hours redoing things, fixing things. Like in the data analytics space, right? If you're going down an avenue with thinking these are the hypotheses I want to test, and then you come back out like, wasn't any of them. So you're back to the drawing board, and you redo and you redo and you redo, and you don't make any real progress, because ultimately what you want is that insight of the hypotheses that these are the strategic insights we want to provide. So yeah, it's something to learn. One of the things then maybe, later on, when you are in a more settled or more a mature part in the career, usually these roles then also come with more autonomy. So I think the other advice I would give is to pick roles where you can have some autonomy, so that you can also drive the work that you're supposed to do in the direction where your strengths lie, right? Usually, at least for me in the last many years, there's always a lot more work than what I can do. And so it's really around knowing which way to direct that work and have the autonomy to direct them. Yeah. Although, right?
How do you find your strengths? I mean, we're talking about assessment. So how did you go about? How did you find your strengths?
Yeah, it's a good one, right? Because we need to know the strength to keep going. I did use Strength Finder as a way, and then I had like a journal where I did that for about 2 months to really kind of like try to link things that I've done back to certain strength areas that were said, and then help shape that perception of what do I know I do well. Ultimately, also, it comes a bit with experience, right? It's like if you have been doing certain things, it becomes easier, and you know that this is where you know how to excel, because like it becomes a like a repetitive success model. So yeah, Strength Finder was one. We did, yeah, and then also I think actually having managers give feedback of what they think you do well, particularly if you are, for example, in an established role and your manager changes and somebody new comes in, right? And then as they do their assessment, asking them really kind of like, what do you think are my strengths?
Yeah.
What have you noticed that I really do well? Somebody with a fresh pair of eyes will then probably, you know, give a good insight as to what your strengths are. Mm-hmm. So it's an internal thing, but also, you know, seek input from outside, do those tests. Mm-hmm. Right? Maybe would be those three things.
Yeah. And you were, I mean, I was always also working with StrengthsFinder, and I think it's a very, very good tool to get some insights. What I haven't done yet, and I think that's a very good recommendation of you, is journaling for, as you said, a month or two, and trying to recognize what have I done well and how can I link it back to my strengths. I think that is a very, very important recommendation. Mm. And you also said, we're talking about roles where you have autonomy. How do I find, or how do I create my dream role?
We would have a long conversation. I think, so I'm now in the digital space, right? And I'm in the tech side. So maybe it's easier for me to say, because when you are in a role and in an environment that changes a lot, right? Mm-hmm. By default, the work is not so set very specifically. If you're working in a bank, in a regulatory kind of work, then there might be not as much autonomy to steer, because the work is very prescriptive. Mm-hmm. So if you are in a field where, or you work where there is ambiguity about the external context, where the industry is going, even when there is reorganizations within your company, this is all opportunity to grab a little bit more autonomy and simply step up and say, this is what I think we should go do. Does mm-hmm. that make sense, right? Or not even ask. You can, depends on where you are. It's just like, this is my strategy. And then you don't wait for approval. Yeah. You say, this is my strategy. And if people are not agreed, then they can come back and say something. So there is a context where you get automatically more autonomy due to the ambiguity of the work. If you're in a very specific set, then it could be that you're just saying, hey, I want to take that step, mm-hmm. and I want to define what I want to work on, and you talk that with your manager, right? That's another way of getting autonomy.
Yeah,
right, by driving that. So you were mentioning journaling, which is actually, it came to my mind, another thing that I've started to do based on the advice of a fantastic women's network as well, which is the Bragbook. Right? Yeah, the Bragbook is is something really good for all of us. And if you then actually review back as to why you have written something into the Bragbook, mm-hmm. that can be a good insight into playing mm-hmm. to your strengths and passions, because often passions and strengths are actually quite closely linked. We tend to get better at things that we're passionate about. Yeah.
So let me just jump in here, and I think in one of the conversations I had, the Breakbook was also mentioned. So we both are connected via V's and Women in Negotiations, and it's really a fantastic coaching program for increasing your elevating your negotiation skills. And one element is the Bragbook, where we write down our successes, what we were proud of, what did we achieve. And it not only captures everything that you have achieved, and when you're down at some point in time, you can go back and actually see what you have done. And it's way more than you have on top of your head. So it really is the foundation of what you're good at. And for me, it also helps me to talk about my successes in a more confident and easy way. It's natural. I'm not, bragging like I'm the biggest and the strongest. It's natural because I love what I'm doing, and it's written down and I appreciate what I've done. So I think the Bragbook, what we were told by these, is really something very, very important.
Indeed, 100%. And as we were talking about playing to your strength, right? Having that foundation of understanding all the outputs and, you know, all the good stuff that we've already delivered also helps to drive that conversation that, hey, I want to go do this because I know I'm good at, and believing in that, right? Being able to simply articulate, hey, I know how to do organization redesigns because, you know, I've already done it many times, and not feel like you're an imposter or you're faking it, right? Because you know it's your strength, and it's your passion. And so bringing that forward and really drive what you do in your work is lining up with that. That being said, I think one caveat, right? And I think, Ines, you would fully agree with that as well, is that playing to your strengths doesn't mean that you're doing the same thing over and over, right? Curiosity and you know, broadening the horizon is a key part of keeping your strength relevant and up to date, and making sure that your strength evolves. Not that they change, but that you know, kind of like expand a bit. So one of mine, for example, is that I'm really good at reviewing how work gets done and simplifying that. And you can take that across many different areas, but it's by my chosen curiosity and getting my nose somewhere else into a different department, a different process or something, that you grow that skill as well. So a strength also is a skill then, and you grow that.
I would like to add here as well, because I'm you know, I've been doing project management for 20 years, and I'm very good in going into crisis projects. And then someone told me it's de-panicking customers. So just, you know, calming down and getting structure and doing project management and project work. And for me, it's a key strength of mine, but it's not my passion anymore. But because I have done it, I have seen it for a long time, and I'm now trying to figure out the strength that I have, where I don't have the passion anymore. Where can it lead me? And as you said, with curiosity, maybe the path and the strength will evolve, and I can apply the strength somewhere else. But I don't have to do the same topic over and over and over again. I can evolve and also, with new passion, find it somewhere else.
Indeed, yeah. So I mean, there is a lot of transferable skills that exist within strength, within skill sets itself, right? So then it's finding the new passion and see what is the transferables that you can take across, right? And that you can bring along and say, I have this already in my backpack, you know, and the rest I learned. That's the new thing, right? So indeed, but yeah, so I think that's in terms of, you know, learning early what your strengths are is an important element, and then work towards using them. I at least learned very early that working harder is not smarter and doesn't give you the results you want. So I've always been cautious of just chugging in lots more hours. I have this hesitancy to just work till 2 a.m. and it's like, really, is that the best way to get stuff done? Because early on it was not helping.
Yeah. I mean, you also said that one of your key strengths is simplifying work. So it's like, long hours doesn't have to be, how can I simplify it?
Indeed, exactly.
When you look at yourself as the younger me, what advice would you give from your experience now? What advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I think it comes back to really try to find what your strengths are as quickly as possible, and then stick with that. So it can be, you know, if you're just always in an academic setting, it might not be so easy to understand how to find your strengths. So apart from taking these tests on Strength Finder, etc., I think maybe also work experience outside school can help give some sort of, do you like this? Are you good at this? And I did a lot of side jobs during my university time. So that's maybe something that I would say, you know, find them and then also, you know, trust that and move with that, you know, not to be letting others mold that. I mean, I went into the data analyst role because people thought it would be the right thing for me. And I just went along with it, you know, because I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, make sure that you choose the roles that and play, you know, assess if they are playing to your strength rather than trying to be molded into something because others think that this is a good job for you. Yeah. That would be my advice to my younger self.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to share? Some stories or some experiences?
I'm wondering, so one of the things that actually for me also plays into strength is the power of focus. So it is powerful to focus on a few things, right? So it's okay. I think the Strength Finder gives you 5 or 6.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, gives you 5 top.
I think with now I'm kind of like, know that I'm going to focus on 2. You know, these are the ones that I want. This is going to be how I build my legacy. And so that is then also something where there's obviously a choice, right, to be had from all the different things that we do well, to focus and really try to drive some sort of a red line in the way that you think about, you know, all the hours that we invest in our work. Why do we do that? And from one company to the next, etc. Having something that can be a bit of a red line is helpful, and focus helps there, right? Because otherwise we're going to go. Not that that's bad, but it's. I think it helps to kind of like make you also more confident, because you can say, 15 years I've done this, just like you say, Ines, right? 20 years project management, crisis management is something that I know how to do, and I know I'm good at that.
Yeah,
that would be the other thing, maybe.
Okay, wonderful. I think this was just really a great conversation, very, very important. And I hope that the people who are watching and listening, take some of your recommendations really by heart. And why don't you start with the Breakbook today and keep on journaling and use it to find and manifest your strengths.
Super advice. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, or I guess to you, Ines, as well, ping us on LinkedIn.
Yes, definitely. And I saw on your LinkedIn profile you're hiring, so definitely reach out to Barbara and have a chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Ines, for having me and for the fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.